It's Friday. It is the 5th of July 2024. It is the morning after the night before, and it is time for the two Revs to be back together again. Hello, good afternoon, Reverend Tony. How are you?
I'm very well, Reverend Nick. How are you, dear?
Not so bad. Just getting used to all of the different things going on in the universe. Let's have a quick change of view there. That's better. We can see each other a little bit better there.
We can, yeah. Let me just get the
And yes,
vacuum out of shot.
the vacuum out. I know it's always good fun, isn't it? But it is good to see you, and it's good to see everyone starting to join in and joining in the conversation. If you are watching, feel free to comment, join in the conversation. Let's chat, let's talk, and get the conversation rolling. But what have you been up to, Tony, and how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Busy week again. We're cultivating relationships with different organisations and getting a few irons in fires and things. But apart from that, just the general day-to-day stuff as we do.
Absolutely.
How about you? What have you been up to this week?
Well, obviously there was no Little Port Church last night, which is a rarity, of course. But it was,
Something was happening. I can't remember.
yeah, something was going on yesterday, which meant that we weren't able to use the village hall. But other than that, I have been keeping myself busy. Wrapped up the first 4-week workshop on exploring deeper evidence. That finished the first 4-week course. That finished yesterday. And of course, I've been busy doing the circles, and I'm serving a psychic supper tomorrow night, King's Lynn Church on
Lovely.
Sunday. But keeping my ear to the ground and my nose to the grindstone, and just sticking my oar in where it's not wanted. But also listening out for information and news on the world in which we live. And of course, in this movement, which brings us to our first very somber, very sad, but also special comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am going to hand it over mostly to you because you knew her better than I did, although that did not mean that her reach did not reach me. Let's be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
she was that kind of person, but a wonderful, beautiful, and very formidable, powerful force in this way of life. The lovely Pat,
Yes.
Pat Campbell,
Yeah.
bless her heart. We have putting it in a kind of an interesting way. Pat and I had a mutual acquaintance who grinned of her and spoke of her often. And sadly for us, she has passed to the higher realms of light. And I know that she had quite a healthy and heavy influence on yourself and all of our ministry up in your neck of the woods.
She
Um,
did. She
in
did. Yeah.
particular, our Jean, who I know is watching. Hello, Jean. But I want to say, on behalf of all of us as an administrative body, as the Alliance, fly high, Pat. I know that our loss is heaven's gain, and I also know that you are going to be a huge force to be reckoned with in your future work and your future role in the world of spirit. And to everyone who's left behind, who has lost that physical presence, our thoughts and prayers are absolutely with you. But I know that she will be watching and will kick you if you let it get you down too much. But Tony, a little bit
Absolutely.
about your connection, because you obviously knew her better than I did.
Yeah. I met her through Jean because she is Jean's stepmom. Her and Jean's dad were actually married by Gordon Higginson, which just tells you of the reach of the woman within spiritualism and Jean's dad, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's been involved in spiritualism, or she still is, but was involved in spiritualism for many, many, many a decade.
Yeah,
Girl and woman, bless her. And I know this won't be the last time we've heard from Miss Patricia Campbell
absolutely.
at all. Bless her. Yeah.
In actual fact, by way of tribute, I am allowed to share one small anecdotal conversation about Pat, because of course, she was having conversations online with yourself and myself and Jean at one point, and she said to me, "I would love to have a conversation with you about philosophy at some point, young man." And I said, "Oh, that would be absolutely wonderful." And from behind me, a voice said, "I am a brave man in spirit and in life, but I'm not that brave. You are on your own." And and that was the comment from the man himself. Bless his heart. He did it with a huge grin on his face. Don't get me wrong, but Pat, whatever it is that you are doing right now, I know it is going to be worthy, worthwhile, and we are going to feel its influence.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I feel privileged to have known Pat. And yes, Michael's just said Pat is a formidable ambassador for the faith and for gardening. She loved to be out pottering in the garden. And bless her, it was one of her big regrets that towards the end of her life, she couldn't get out there and do what she wanted to do because age and frailty. And that really bugged her. And I know the swallows nesting in her garage will miss her terribly.
Yes, yes. Although I'm sure they'll probably see her as well, knowing the
Yeah,
animal kingdom as I
yeah.
do. But
You're right, Michael. Was not it is not was.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, if anyone else is having signal problems, please let us know. But I think that could well be you, Mother, because we seem to be connected reasonably well. You might have to
Yeah.
do a reboot on your router, sweet pea. Um, but yes, so Jean and yourself and everyone who knew her, my thoughts are indeed with you. But it required. It wasn't a nice to. It required mention.
Oh
Um,
yes, yes, absolutely. It would have been a great disservice not to have mentioned that
absolutely.
Pat had Pat had passed. Um, because for spiritualism, it is going to be a miss. She
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
a huge force in this way of life and a massive ambassador.
Yeah, over 6 decades a spiritualist is a huge achievement in anyone's life.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely. And we have said goodbye, so now we should say hello to those who have
absolutely.
commented.
Absolutely, and I will use my because I've got my proper mouse back now, so I'm more in control. So I can use my wheel rather than have to click on everything. Starting off, of course, with the lady herself, who is a force to be reckoned with in my life. Hello, Mother.
Oh, yes. Hello, Mama Brown, and bonjour, Shelley.
Hello, sweetie. Hope the phones are sorted. Of course, the other Tony and Eunice are with us as well. Good to see you both.
And Mr. Flint. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello
Welcome.
to you, and of course to Agatha too. Um, And there we are, indeed, the lady herself. You are very welcome, Jean. I hope it is of use to you.
It will be. Ashley, Reverend Ashley. Hello, hello, hello.
And I better say it because I don't very often. Hello, Michael, even though we already have briefly.
Yeah, we have. Yes. And yes, we have serving spoons at the caravan because of Mrs. Pat Campbell.
Yes, yes,
She came to
absolutely.
stay with Jean and complained that Jean did not have serving spoons to serve a salad with. So Michael and I went out to Bridlington and with her and bought some serving spoons so we could serve her salad the next day.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And of course, hello to everyone who is watching but hasn't actually commented yet. Like, for example, hello, Chrissy. Good to see you. And I'm sure a certain young man is in the background listening as well. So good to see you too. Do us a favor, my friends. Please share, like, and subscribe. Let the world know that we are here. Because we haven't done much sharing ourselves this morning because both of us have been rather busy getting
Yes.
other little chores done. So please, oh, there is a nice surprise coming Thursday. I read the thing. I look forward with bated breath, darling. But yeah, please let the world know that we are here by sharing the link that you are watching right now. You can just there's a little button that says share, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Let us know that you are there by saying hello if you haven't already. And prepare yourself to ask questions, make comments, get involved in the conversation. This is, of course, your program. We do set the scene and set the tone by giving it a bit of a title these days. Um, yeah, welcome along, everyone. And interestingly, the
You
route,
spotted it as well.
yeah, interestingly, the route we were going to go down is indeed right there. Hello to Gemma Edwards. And I'm glad to see that the phones are now sorted, Sherry, because that's one less thing for you to worry about. We chip away at it in small measure. I'd like to obviously, we're gonna have to talk about politics for a little bit at the very, very least, because it is obviously going to have quite a huge impact on our life.
Mm.
Um, I will start by saying I've been very careful about sharing publicly my opinion on politics because I don't believe that it's my role or responsibility to in any way um involve myself in anyone's decision making, either deliberately or by accident, by sharing my opinion and unduly influencing people's free will. Um, I don't believe I have interference, but you're not the first person to say there's a signal problem. But we haven't had any problems so far, and
No.
Eunice said that she was all right. So just give it a bash. Hello, Stephen Rayner, by the way. But what I will say is I was very vocal about, regardless of what decision you make on voting, make sure you vote. Because I do believe that if you're going to have an opinion on who's in charge, you need to have exercised um, your citizenly right to actually have your say. And then you have a right to have an opinion on it after the fact. If you're not interested in helping the decision to be made, then it's um, it's a worry. Um, but when it comes to where we are now and where we go from here, I think that the new administration has a lot of work to do in terms of reuniting people, re-establishing trust, and I wish them well in doing so. Um, I think as a nation, as a people, as a group of people, what we need to do now is start thinking more in terms of living life rather than telling everyone else how to live their life. We need to go in a direction where we do hold people to account, but in a polite, fair, and just manner, to stop being bogged down by bigotry, to stop being influenced by half truths and falsehoods, and investigate anything we read with at least one more source before we react to it, and just generally calm down and wait and see, because to judge anybody based on their first few hours of a new job is grossly unfair. But equally, we shouldn't be silent in terms of holding people to account. And if they make a promise to do something, we should make sure that they do so by exercising our God given right to use our voices. But I think for now, the world, but certainly the country needs to lick its wounds, heal itself, think about a time of healing and self-reflection and see where we go from there. At the end of the day, it's done. The decision has been made by 60% of the population, that were eligible anyway. The decision is made. The deal is done, and we should see how that goes before we start jumping to any conclusions, because regardless of my opinions, there are good and bad in every situation, good and bad in every party, and there have been truths and lies shared about all of them almost equally. So we need to just focus on seeking the truth to the best of our ability and holding people to account when they make promises to us. But just most importantly, from my perspective, be bloody nice and just be kind to each other. And everything else usually tends to sort itself out if you follow those rules, in your heart. But that's just my opinion, and I do share that as a minister, because it's not saying any political views. But I do believe that we need to start growing up and growing forward and being nicer to each other now, and start resting our argumentative sides for when it's actually needed. What are your thoughts, Tony?
Exactly what you've said, Nick. I couldn't have said that bit better. I think we have become quite a divided, divisive community over the last few years. And there has been a lot of otherness being thrown out. Because you're not like us, you are other, you are less than, you are whatever. And it's time to heal those divisions and start building bridges again. What I would say is something you touched on, and I want to expand a bit, is do not be afraid if you see something happening from political parties, from anywhere. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So if you see things happening you're not happy with in your community, in and around your MP, political party, say it.
Yeah.
Contact your MP, contact your councillors and say, this is not what I voted on and I want you to put this right. It is a very personal thing, politics, and it's not for us as ministers to say, well, this party is better than that party is better than that party, but just look at what people are saying, look at whether it's bringing a community together or it's pushing it further apart. And if it's pushing it further apart, use your voice and say, no, we were there a few years ago, we don't want to be there again.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that score. And hello to our late arrivals. It's absolutely fine. Hello. I did see someone. Hello to Gemma. Thank you for the comment about the interference. At least it shows that it's not entirely us. Hello to John. Hello to Jen. Hello to Tim. Chris, gonna say there's another election going on if you are part of the SNU. There's a voting system in the SNU. That's because your organisation is committee based, and because your organisation makes decisions on behalf of that particular group. There is no voting system within the Independent Spiritualists Alliance. I won't say that applies to Christian spiritualism in general, because there are indeed other organisations that administrate. The Independent Spiritualists Alliance is not a political or organisationary arm that tells people how to govern their organisations. We give guidance, we give advice, we're invited to do so, but we are an umbrella organisation that people can sit with if they feel comfortable to do so. So there's no need for any elections, because we don't actually influence or control how people live. So it's a very, very different situation, because obviously when it comes to the SNU, that there's a lot of money changing hands in terms of the SNU trust. building funds, memberships. We don't have membership. People can be a part of the alliance without an administration or a joining fee, just by saying, I agree with those principles of which they hold dear, and so we stand with them. We are more of an umbrella than we are an organization that administrates. So until such a time as I'm certainly dead and buried 100 years, the alliance will never be something like that. We There are enough organizations within spiritualism that operate in that way without adding another one. We are just a group of people that invite people to sit under our umbrella if it's raining, sit under our umbrella if it is sunny, and dance in the streets with our umbrella if they feel like having a party. So there is no formal election process because there are no positions that have a financial or legislative or rule-based influence, because the only paperwork, the only rules we have is the Charter of Spiritualism and the Code of Conduct and the Seven Principles, of which the Code of Conduct is the 10 original spiritualist commandments that the seven principles are based off, and the Code of Conduct are the ways of living that were given to the Golden Chain recitations, in other words, Emma Hardinge Britain, in the same vein. If you agree to all of them, you're welcome to join the party, and we don't ask you for any money for it either. So things work a little bit differently. Um, Thank you for your answer, but I'm a little confused. So, what body gives you the title of Reverend? The Independent Spiritualists Alliance ordains ministers, and we don't actually pay to be trained. We dedicate our time, our effort, and our resources to uh, do that course and that study. Under the current UK law, in terms of the human rights legislation, and also the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, any organization that comes together for the purposes of praise or religion are entitled to do so and appoint people as teachers and leaders. And it is the handing down of that tradition. I was ordained, as was Tony, by another organization. We went our own separate ways, mutually agreeable, I'm sure. And so we came together to form something that represented what we believed would be wanted and needed by people just like us. But legally speaking, so long as you are trained and legally qualified to do so, in terms of not having any kind of criminal record of a notorious nature in terms of how you deal with people, you are entitled to be ordained by that organization that comes together. Certainly, that's what the Home Office, the Passport Authority, and the DVLA say. There is a lot of confusion in this country about what is deemed as a real religion. There is no constitution per se, other than legal precedent, which is why spiritualism was in the statute books a long time, because there was a court case about it. When it comes to the census, it is not a legal list of religions. It is actually a list that is used to generate statistics so that proportions of groups and minorities can be catered for adequately and appropriately, or at least that's the plan. But certainly, when it comes to the law of the land, the Home Office have gone on record as saying the United Kingdom government does not legislate on matters of conscience, and by the very definition of those. Uh, Bear with me, I'll just finish what I was saying, then I'll read that. Um, Basically, when it comes to the legal part of it, any group that comes together to give praise is a legally defined religion by definition of a matter of conscience. In other words, as the way Jesus said, where more than two or three are gathered together, I will be there, and so will the faith. When it comes to the legal requirements of ministry, the only time you have to be registered as a minister is if you do visits in prisons, and also if you wish to perform legal weddings. They are in the middle of working on that legislation, or at least they were, because it's so draconian that you wouldn't believe it. And it makes it difficult for any organisation outside of the Church of England to actually get it done, unless you have your own building. Because it's actually the building that marries, not per se the individual. You have to be registered to a building when you are outside of the registry office. Tim says, I think all that is required is that you pray to a diet that's justified you as a religion. A deity, yes.
Deity, yeah.
Yes, so long as you perceive something larger than yourself, outside of the or inside the supernal realms, then you are absolutely covered as a religion. Tim says in 2013, Lord Tolston made a judgment for religion to hold the status of religious part, its divine service must be of a teaching nature. This is achieved through the philosophy. Absolutely, any group that doesn't deal with the philosophy of our way of life is more of a social or a gathering of, you know, not necessarily religious nature, because a lot of people ain't happy with the word religion. But nonetheless, if you believe in a superior being, and you talk about it, you're a religion. So legally and morally, is the answer to your question, Tim. That's how we get ordained, legally
Yeah.
and morally, and because we care to serve. And you know what? If you ever get bored with your current organisation, come and see me. I'd love to lay my hands on you, love. Um, he knew something like that was coming. Bless. I've
Yeah,
known Tim a long time, and I do enjoy our conversations.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, for those that have been with us a long time, Tim actually did come on as a guest. See, it wasn't a no. It wasn't a
It's
no.
not a no.
You
It's
know,
not a no. It's
let's
definitely a
face it.
maybe.
If the red wall can have a majority landslide, maybe we can too. So I'm sorry, I'm joking. I am joking. Um,
Yeah.
I have a great deal of respect for anyone who follows the path. I will say there is one interesting thing, and then we'll get back on track a bit, because you know me, I get distracted. There is a very interesting thing about the census in terms of spiritualism and Christian spiritualism. When you put yourself down as a Christian spiritualist, um, when you put yourself down as a spiritualist or a modern spiritualist, when the stats come out about national religions, the religions that make up the nation, very often, because the quantity is too low to get a category of its own, it gets lumped in with other.
Oh.
But if you put, obviously, if you request the details, you can see the exact number of spiritualists where it is in that other category. But if you put down Christian spiritualist, you get put with other denominations of Christianity. So, as
Oh.
yes, they do call it a minority religion. Absolutely. Other minority religions, I think, is the exact term. But I did request the census. It was not last census, but the one before. But there was all of the other, and then it was, 5 people, Jedi Knights, and
Yeah.
so many thousands. Excuse me. Pleasingly, so many thousands of spiritualists, but we were up in the top section with that 53% or whatever it was, the Christian spiritualists. All right, we were down at the bottom of the list, but we were still there. So, um,
Hey
but
ho.
it's interesting how we all get divvied and separated when we're all doing the same job. And I do include all religions in that statement. Um, but yes, in terms of the political side, we were obviously talking about this time to move forward, and this time to grow, and this time to unite. throw you a curveball question. And no, we don't always discuss this beforehand, so he didn't know this one was coming. Do you think it's possible? First and foremost.
I don't see why not. I would hope so, because it can't be worse than it was, is what I will say. And I do think there has to be a time to move forward, to change. And I'm not repeating any political rhetoric there. It's just there has to be a change. And I think, again, to go back to what we've both said before, if we're not seeing the change we like, it's time to use our voice, get in touch with our MPs, and to kick and scream and shout about it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
We can't go on being divided and being otherized and being, I know we just talked about being put in another category.
Yes.
But we can't do it. We can't keep looking at people as other than. We've got to start looking at community and building communities and looking out for each other. And like you say, just being nice and kind and thinking about the circumstances other people have found themselves in that have led them to the point they're at today.
Yeah.
And taking that into account and consideration, and just stop being whipped up by all of this scaremongering and rhetoric that comes out and under many guises, religious, political, and otherwise. And just look at, like your mum's comment there a bit further down on the screen, a spiritual family. We are all a spiritual family. We should be nurturing each other, guiding each other, helping each other, being influential to each other in a positive way. So that's just, I hope it's possible, and I would like to think it is what people are striving for now, and it's certainly what I'm striving for, and I know you are too, Nick, for people to heal, to move forward, and to start building those bridges and removing those barriers and starting to work as a united country.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned there and earlier on about divisiveness and rhetoric, and one of the things that I have been positively frustrated to the point of being heartbroken by recently and over the last couple of years is language appropriation. Not cultural appropriation, although that's annoying too, unless it's invited to do so. Language appropriation, like the term woke being turned into a dirty word when its original meaning was someone who is aware of things being wrong, things being incorrect, someone who is awake. To hear even spiritual people as well going off on one about wokery. I mean, it's a made up word. I know it's in the dictionary now because that's how words get used, but I think wokery is just a silly way of making nice people sound bad. And it is divisive, and it is absolutely unjust. And I think if we were to look beyond fancy words, I know I'm a fine one to talk. I swallow a bloody thesaurus every other day, but I don't use those words to deride or separate people, or at least I hope I don't. I think using language and posh words to make yourself sound something that you are not is always a risk. We do have that problem in this way of life when it comes to certain practices and teachings being made to sound something that they're not. It's not usually by spiritualist people, but outside people trying to come in and take advantage. Thankfully, most people are awake enough to notice it and call it out when the time comes. But I think, if we were to and I don't like quoting politicians, but it was said today. If we look beyond the performance, and if we are to look beyond the performance and start looking at the effort, that is where we can move forward. Um, Tim has said, I think when we vote for MPs, we have to trust, but they are MPs for good and spiritual reasons. Indeed, in the past, there have. Can't think of his name, but the gentleman who fought to have the Medium Act pushed through. Yes. I
Yeah,
can't remember, but I'm sure there are good. Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't think anybody goes into political service with the original intention of becoming idiots and monsters. The vast majority are always good and decent people who go because they want to make a difference. Sometimes along the way, that power corrupts, and sometimes along that way, corrupt people silence the good. What we need to do is listen out for the ones that do have a decent voice, that represent our highest sense of right and wrong, and give them our voice and support. Cherry Ann makes a really, really interesting point. I pray for the same here in France as we have the second round of voting on Sunday. Just be kind in thoughts and words. Yes, there seems to be a run of it again, doesn't there? This, we the world seems to go in cycles politically, doesn't it? Swinging
yeah,
from the left to the middle to the right to the extremes of both. And I'm not going to deny it. There are now, and it was a huge wake up call for me, Tony. I lived under this delusion during my youth that it was impossible to have extreme left wing views. Um, Sadly, I was wrong, which was heartbreaking for me, really. But why anyone feels the need to sit at the extreme end of any spectrum still doesn't make any sense to me, if I'm honest,
no,
because
no,
it doesn't. I do feel that I'm probably more centrist than I am anything, because on some things I fall on the right, on some things I fall on the left, and I pray and hope to believe that those things are for the greater good of everybody, not the individual. Um, but that's probably a good thing that I'm into ministry of a spiritual nature and not ministry of a political nature, because I think I'd probably do as my grandfather would have said by now, and that's say swear.
yeah, yeah. It. I think there has to be that moderate view, and I was quite pleased that Keir Starmer used that word in his speech today when he was
Yes.
stood outside Number 10. A time for moderation,
Yeah.
to take stock, to reevaluate, and to move forward in service, which we've been saying it for years now, love.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who is a spiritualist, anyone who's been spent any time developing as a medium, could not have been even in the slightest way tickled by those phrases, because we recognize them as things that we hold dear as ministers, as mediums, as brothers and sisters of our fellow human nature, to for things to be about service and not performance is something that we've been struggling with this way of life for a number of years as well.
Yeah.
So it does kind of resonate. But everyone at home, what are your thoughts? I mean, let's be honest. I do hope that everything that turns out in a way that is good for everyone. We all know hope is a difficult thing, but then I've never known hope when it wasn't on a diet. So,
Yeah.
we have that to be aware of at least. But if we're not happy, as Tony said, make a voice heard. Why people don't. I love writing letters, write emails, send messages. Not a chance in heaven, hell, or health. Heaven, hell, or earth, mother, will I ever set foot on Downing Street. Thank you very much.
I
Um,
have. I have set foot on Downing Street. It was a visit, but I have set foot on Downing Street. But no, no. I often joke about should we rule the world, And the minute I get into power, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and paint the whole bloody country with rainbows. But ain't going to happen because I just couldn't. I'm more effective doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We as ministers, as well as mediums, are about individual service, helping that person in that moment. I much prefer working mildly in the shadows, although I don't get the chance as much as I used to. I much prefer working on a more one-to-one individual basis in small groups. And I don't think that politics is for me. It's one of the reasons why I moved away from committee-based churching to ministry-based churching is that there's, you know, not because I get absolute power, because at the end of the day, the congregation is always the most powerful part. Because if they don't like what you're doing, they just walk, and quite rightly so. So, as a minister, I'm held to account by my congregation, and trust me, there are a number of people in that church who gladly are quite happy to tell me if they think I've dropped a ball on something, and long may they reign, because a church is its people. I'm just their representative and a facilitator. In politics, the term minister means something far different, even though it shouldn't. And I,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, this is the thing. And I agree with you on that, Eunice. Talk is cheap; it's actions that matter. Let's see how it all sits after 6 months. And I hope that we can look and say, well, things have improved. Um,
Let's cross fingers
yeah,
because
I mean,
yeah.
our way of life has often put itself in the firing line for the sake of hope. You've only got to look at during the war. Estelle Roberts got in a huge amount of grief because her prediction was wrong. Don't worry about the war, talks of peace, talks of peace. She got in huge amounts of trouble because she didn't get it right. But the message of spirit, and it relates to someone asking me earlier on in the week if spirit can tell fibs. If they think telling people to hope for peace is a way to generate peace, then they will do so. So I fully support what she did, because you've got to hope. And yes, absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, I've never known hope, as I said, when it wasn't on a diet. But it doesn't mean to say that it's a fool's hope by any shape of the imagination.
No.
But yes, action. I mean, there's a lot of people in this way of life talk about karma a lot. I often remind them that karma actually means action, not balance. And so we must always do what those wonderful spirit people said: take personal responsibility and actually move our BTMs and do something about the problems of the world, not sit and contemplate our navel.
Yeah. I
Um,
just think it would be worth revisiting Gemma Edwards, who said, I thought there was only one way of working with spirit, not different alliances. I'm confused.
wrong one. Higher
Yeah,
or lower than that one?
lower than that one.
Lower than that one.
It's just after Tim's comment about required you pray to a deity that justifies you as a religion.
Oh, I did miss that one. Right. Okay. So I thought there were only one way of working with spirit, no different alliances. Right. So, as in terms of being mediums, there are different ways of working actually as a medium completely.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
in terms of the different groupings and alliances, it's more about what suits the individual members in terms of what that group represents. It's all about administration. It's all about flag waving. It's all about how things are done. That there has always been more than one group in the I mean, even as big as the SNU is, there's always, for almost as long been the SAGB, the Spiritual Association of Great Britain, and various different other groupings, as well as a huge number of independent churches. That was the idea behind the Independent Spiritualists Alliance, in terms of, having sovereign rights to run your church the way you see fit, for so long as it goes within the boundaries of the seven principles, um, you know, and good taste and decency and the law of the land. Other than that, if you want to have a service that's got a 5 minute address or a 20-minute address, or starts with prayers and ends with prayers, or uses the word amen, or has a cross or a picture of Jesus, or doesn't have a cross and doesn't have a picture of Jesus, if that's the way your church wants to run itself, then that is, the way it is. But there are many different organizations. We are just one.
Yes.
And people are welcome to join the party if they so wish, as many people have chosen to do so, actually.
Yes,
um,
and we're growing.
yeah, absolutely. There,
And I
there
was
is.
going to say that that's just tied back nicely up to Tim's
Hang on a minute.
question.
Hang on a minute.
We're hanging, we're hanging.
I have been wearing it this week. My
Yes, Tim.
favourite T-shirt. Yes, Tim. That just shows how long I've known Tim. Can I ask a question? As individuals who hold a religious position, I'm sure you're governed by guidelines, maybe even rules. So, does politics limit how you present yourself as ministers? Um,
Mm,
Only
I,
in terms of the law of the land, which
yeah.
doesn't restrict how we present ourselves as ministers in terms of our spiritualist and spiritual teachings. It's more about it. I mean, it does restrict whether or not we can perform weddings. It does restrict whether or not we can visit someone in a prison, unless we register to do both of those things. It doesn't restrict our ministry in terms of being there for people. It doesn't restrict our ministry in terms of being able to conduct a service or listen to someone who needs support and guidance. I mean, everyone keeps going off on one at the moment about regulate this, regulate that. Even to be a counsellor requires or has no um, legal regulatory body. Like, for instance, Ofcom is, the Office of Communication. So if you're broadcasting, you're regulated by Ofcom, a government extension. Um, Counselling does not have any governing body in political affiliation. It's what's called self-governing. And so long as they self-govern in a way that is appropriate and just and means that they don't cause much grief, they will remain self-governed. It's only when you start acting like idiots and start acting like know-it-alls and start acting like you can get away with whatever you want, that's when the law steps in. So as far as no, other than, things that are duly common sense by the law, I don't actually think politics limits how we present ourselves as
No,
ministers.
no.
It has in the past. I mean, let's face it, we wouldn't have been able to have done this, 100 years ago or even 80 years ago, because we'd have been done under the Vagrancy Act and in terms of the Witchcraft Act. Um, there are certain things that are covered by Ofcom in terms of broadcasting, but that's, I've got no intention of becoming a TV presenter, so I'll never worry about
No.
putting the term "for entertainment purposes only" on any of my work, because it's all done as part of my ministry. And as I said, the United Kingdom government does not legislate on matters of conscience, so not in any way that it really would matter or grind my gears yet.
No.
Um,
No.
If it did, I'd certainly make a few voices. But I no, I don't think so, because so long as you're kind, so long as you're compassionate, and so long as you follow the law of the land in which you live, um, politics really can't have an influence on it, especially
No.
with the United Nations legislation, and certainly in terms of the human rights legislation. And I know it's often, even by me, still referred to as the European human rights legislation, but we adopted that into the UK legislation just before Brexit. So it's part of the statute books. What I will say is some people want it gone. That might make a difference. Um,
Yes. Yes.
but that's not at the moment. At the moment, our job is to be there for people, support people, heal the sick, listen to the brokenhearted, prove life eternal, and cheer up those that need cheering up. Which, interestingly enough, we haven't made any Kafunga boo boos or any bloopers this week yet.
No, we
Haven't
haven't
we
yet.
been good boys?
We have. We have. Just on Tim's point, I think, yes, Eunice has just picked up my point a little bit. Where political life and ministry, I think, do touch together a little bit is the impact of certain legislations and political will that is being pushed down. I think that's where we as ministers can see what's coming on the horizon and go, hang on, we need to work on this. We need to work with people because this is going to have a huge impact on our congregation. That's where I think ministers and politics can sometimes rub up against each other a little bit, but in terms of having a limit on it, I would say no. It's just we as ministers have to have ministers, as in religious ministers, have to have an eye on what the political ministers are doing and keep a mind on how is that going to impact the people we have attending our churches and coming to us for advice and help.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is where the touch points are, but
Yeah.
certainly doesn't limit us on how we present ourselves as ministers. It was quite funny yesterday when I went down, because obviously it's the first time since it's the first time I've had to vote since the law changed in terms of having ID. And the lady who took my driving license, it was clearly stated on there Reverend, and she looked up and went, "Oh, I'm ever so sorry." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "We nicked your hall today, didn't we?" Because Littleport, on the grand scheme of things, isn't a massive place. We all pretty much know each other. If you don't know somebody who doesn't know somebody who doesn't know somebody, then they're obviously not in Littleport. But the hall we use is obviously one of the local polling stations. So that's why we didn't have a service yesterday. But it's like, "Oh, you're Reverend Nick. Just Nick, please. Sorry, we nicked your hall, didn't we?" But that's what happens when you choose to have your services on a Thursday in a polling station. Um,
Yeah.
small price to pay for democracy, I think.
It is absolutely. I thought there was another comment. I've just been looking for it and I can't see it. No, I think it might have been Gemma's, the one you highlighted earlier about I go to circles online. Not so many people. There are so many people arguing, not very love and light. Yeah. That was really interesting, actually, because Jean, who was just commenting earlier, Pat's stepdaughter, and our lovely friend Jean, who will be in Littleport this month, did say at the beginning of her circle, we're starting it back up again, and I want it running like it was before COVID, where we didn't have any cliques, we didn't have any infighting, we just had a lovely night, communing with spirit, and having a nice time. If there's anybody who starts infighting and like he said, she said, you're gone. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Bless you.
Absolutely, Tim.
I will just say half yes, Tim. Half yes, Tim. I have to put on my other hat as chairman of the village hall committee now. In terms of ministry leader at Littleport, yes, it's a bummer. In terms of the chairman of the Littleport Village Hall Committee, it's a good bit of income because rather than a 3-hour booking, it's an all-day booking. We like this; it helps pay for the heating and the electric. So I have to put the other hat on as well. Thank you for thank you to the UK government for helping to pay the electricity bill this month. Swings and roundabouts. And yes,
Yeah.
indeed, Tony and Jean will be at Littleport on the 25th of July. If you wish to see that, be in Littleport. Or you can watch online via the church and my profile on Facebook and YouTube. So that was very hammy radio, wasn't it?
It was, yes. You did a good link there, matey.
Yeah, Queen of the
Very
Links.
good.
Queen of the Links. But yeah, so I think, as I said, and as we have discussed and debated, I think we should look to the future with caution, but a weather eye, and be prepared to speak our truth if we need to, but
Yeah.
give people a chance to either prove right or wrong the opinions of the nation. I will be honest, I'm disappointed that it was a low turnout, 60%. I understand why, because people have just sheer had enough of it.
Yeah.
And apathy is as clear a message as anything, really. But
Absolutely.
let's focus on what we can achieve as individuals and as groups. Be it SNU, SAGB, ISA, DTP, AI, TTFN, all of those different titles. Let's work within our individual groups, within our communities, to look after each other. And yes, very good point, Linda. Remember the white buffalo. The white buffalo says, as a the white buffalo who showed itself over in Yellowstone Park, as a reminder that spirit are always watching and prepared to help when the time comes, but also a warning that we must do more for ourselves and each other. So there we are.
Absolutely.
She does pay.
Absolutely.
She does pay attention, doesn't she?
She
She's a good
does,
girl.
doesn't
She's
she?
a good girl.
She's good. We love Linda.
We do
In fact, we love everybody that joins in on a
We
Friday afternoon.
do. We do. It's been a bit of a different one, but of course, our title today was all about choices. Um, Babylon 5 quote time.
Oh,
Um, at the end of the run, one of the characters said, "In my time here, I learnt about choices and how they affect our lives and the lives of others. And I learnt about consequences and how our choices can lead to those consequences." And that's a really, really important thing. And I know before we started and when we were talking, you said there's been a lot going on about consequence lately. And it is very, very true. All actions lead to something. All actions are part of a choice, and all choices have some form of consequence. Once again, though, we are reminded that consequences don't have to be negative, and we can have positive consequences for our actions as well. And in the days ahead in our daily lives, we must remember that our actions can lead to positive outcomes and consequences of a good nature. I'm reminded also of the phrase, you know, someone once said, the first obligation of a prisoner is to escape. And the response was, so if one is a prisoner of love, one should escape to solitude. If one is a prisoner of joy, one should escape to misery. It's how we perceive those differences in the world that make a difference in our daily lives. And as we go about our daily lives in the coming weeks and months, we must always remember that. Um, Cherry Ann says, I believe this is a time for preparation of the minority parties to organise. Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe this is a time for the individuals to organise rather than the minority parties,
Yes.
because I know it seems like we have politics and governance done to us, but it's done in our name.
Yeah.
And if we don't like it, like we said earlier, you've got a voice, make sure it's heard.
You're the voice, try and understand it, make a noise and make it clear.
Whoa. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was a
Definitely.
song that you were given by Spirit for this show many months ago,
Yes.
was it not?
It was ringing round my head for days and days and days and days. And every time I plugged my phone into the car, it just, that song came up. It
Yeah.
seems to be at the top of every playlist I had on my phone. It's horrendous. I love it. It's a brilliant song. Loved Hi Ren. Oh,
Ah.
oh,
Oh.
oh. Cried.
Yeah. For those that don't know, I've been sharing a song with friends and circles that I'm involved with for about a fortnight now, and it is called High Rent, and it is. Look, as a minister, I have to say, explicit language advisory. If you have a problem with bad language,
Mental
probably
health
best
trigger.
not to watch it. It is about mental health, so it can be very triggering in that score. However, on the flip side of that, I do believe that the message it portrays, I believe that the impact and potential benefits that it can have far outweighs any offence by naughty words that are there within the lyrics, and it's an independent musician. What was it that really? At what point, other than from the first bar through to the last bar, did it raise the hair on the back of your neck?
Um, the depiction of the psychosis speaking, the aggression, it was just amazing. And I think it was when he talks about, so where are your Grammys? Where's your interview with Oprah? You're nothing.
Yeah,
And yeah, and the line, we are one, we are two, we are like two halves of the same thing,
yeah,
and you can't kill me without killing you.
yeah,
And it's like, I've heard that internal monologue
yes.
in my own head several times. So yeah, it was phenomenal. And did you watch the reaction video I sent you from the charismatic voice?
Yes, I did. I'll be honest with you. I've watched a lot of reaction videos, and it's really interesting to see the transition of people watching it, going from "Yeah, I'm here to do a reaction,"
To, what have I just watched?
and it's seeing that transformation of people's attitudes is amazing. I think,
Yeah,
and that is a testament to that song.
Yeah, it is, and it's the most honest self-reflection of mental health I've seen. I know Eminem's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of artists have written about their mental health and the mental problems, but that guy's depiction of it was so raw and honest. Like I said, I immediately understood it because I've heard those internal conversations,
Yeah.
and it was just wonderful. He is such an artist and such a poet, actually.
Yes. There's
Yeah, it,
several people described it as a poetic, epic performance piece rather than just a song.
yeah,
And he is in many ways a modern Shakespeare in terms of grappling with the message that he has inside of him, and how he so eloquently voices it for himself.
yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
and you mentioned ironically the bit about, where's your Grammys and where's your top 10 hit. Well, a few months, because everyone grabbed hold of that and resonated it with so much, it has recently won a European Independent Music Award, and it became number one in the UK download charts, purely because people, as the words of that character in the song says, people respect it and resonate with it and get it. Um,
yeah,
I'm completely with you, Tony, in terms of how it may it makes you shine a mirror on yourself, and you see so much of your own experiences in it. But what I think he does really, really well is towards the end, you feel like you're sinking, and you feel like he's sinking, and you feel like he's sinking further and further. And then when it comes to the point where as I call it, bad Ren, kind of states its case and makes its final stab, and the words are absolutely amazing. And I want to just read them. I was create Newsflash. I was created at the dawn of creation. I am temptation. I am the snake in Eden. I am the reason for treason, beheading all kings. I am sin with no rhyme or reason. Sun in the morning, Lucifer, Antichrist, father of lies, Mephistopheles, truth in a blender, deceitful pretender, the banished avenger, the righteous surrender. And it goes on even more. And then he comes back to that original first verse of, "Hi, Ren, I've been taking some time to be distant." But it sounds defeated. It's a lot quieter. And then it changes. Um, But just as the tide starts turning, just as sure as the night has dawned, just as sure as rainfall soon runs dry when you stand in the eye of a storm, I was made to be tested and twisted. I was made to be broken and beat. I was made by his hand. It's all part of his plan that I stand on my own 2 feet. And at that point in the video, he stands up. And the whole time he's been in a wheelchair. Um, and you know me, my will is eternal, and you know me, you've met me before. Face to face with a beast, I will rise from the east, and I'll settle on the ocean floor. And I go by many names also. Some people know me as Hope. Some people know me as the voice that you hear when you loosen the loose on the rope. And you know how I know that I'll prosper, because I stand here beside you today. I've stood in the flames that created my brain, and I didn't once flinch or shake. And then he breaks out into this such powerful, powerful ending verse, and then has this huge monologue at the end that basically says, "You know that you think this is a song, this is actually my life." And it is so powerful. But that point when he stands up and then says, "And I've got many names as well. Keep your Mephistopheles and your Lucifer Rising. I'm known as Hope. I have hope." And that is why, as I say so many times, I've never known hope when it wasn't on a diet, but I do know that there's no such thing as false hope when you stand on your own 2 feet and make yourself heard, make yourself who you were meant to be. And I just think it's an epic, and it's a testament that, it's been viewed in the last year 30 million times just on one platform.
Yeah. And he's so young.
Yeah.
He is so young to have gone through what he went through.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know at that age if I could have bounced back from that.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Amazing.
currently 34 years old. And the last update I saw in his social media, I think it's Poland that is in getting specialist treatment for I think it's Lyme's disease.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's living, he's still living it. But in his words, he got older and learned how to relax, and that is the
Yeah.
boom.
That's the moment. Yeah. But you asked which particular moment. I don't think there is one moment of that song that doesn't make you go,
Mm.
and clutch the pearls, because you think that is honest. That is honest. That is raw. That has come from fighting and climbing by the nail, holding on by the tips of your fingernails to something.
Yeah.
And like you say, he calls it hope, but it's just hanging on and clinging there. But yeah, amazing piece of work. I loved it.
And ironically, I've read many comments. I haven't read it from himself, but I've got no reason to doubt it because no one's questioned or corrected it. But he is himself agnostic, and has studied many different religions. And I just find it truly amazing that in so many ways he understands what I deem to be the grand design of the Great Spirit better than some people who claim to be religious.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and for
That
me
thing of
that's significant.
he made me and I stood in the fire that created my mind and I didn't flinch away. What a powerful thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've stood there and I've looked into the eyes of the maker and I know what I'm here to do.
Yeah, and
Bravo, that man.
I'm gonna damn well do it. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, after all we've discussed today, I think that is a really, really vital message. So, if anyone hasn't seen it, excuse me, if anyone hasn't seen it and is interested in doing so, it's called High Ren, and it's by Ren. And it is on YouTube, free to watch, and it's amazing. As I said, explicit lyrics advisory. He does get a bit sweary in it, but I think the message is far outweighed by that. Far outweighed by that. And there are some people out there who have commented on it and said that they don't get it, they don't understand it, and blah. And everyone who does get it, I've seen it said so many times, is I'm pleased for you, and I'm so grateful that you don't get it,
Yeah,
because I wouldn't
absolutely.
wish getting it on anyone. And
No.
that's an amazingly courageous thing to say, and it just shows the quality of the people that
Oh,
do come together under it.
absolutely. I would applaud anybody who could stand there and watch that through and go, don't understand it.
Mm.
What's this about? Because, like I said, I've had those internal monologues myself, and I think sometimes that's why we are here doing what we do,
Yes.
because we've battled those demons. Oh dear, it looks
Dear,
like
oh
Nick
dear.
choking to
Right.
death. I think we need to tie the Tony bow off for this evening
Mm.
and let Nick go and choking in
Yes.
comfort.
It's because I haven't got. It's because I haven't got my fan on, and there's no circulation of air, and I'm getting very dry. And I haven't been drinking for a minute or two. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I would never wish understanding that on anybody, um, but the fact that people do and find comfort in it is really, really special.
Yeah.
So it's something ironically, I haven't spoken to anybody personally yet who I've shared it with who didn't get it. Which, is a
Mm.
painful truth,
It
really.
is. It
Um,
is.
but we
Yeah.
get there if we look after each other and walk the path together. Um,
Yes.
so there we are. Well, friends, it's look at the time already, 20 past 5. It's time for me to go and cook some tea and paint my nails red. What are you up to this weekend, young man? Oh, you have not got any of your gels on, dear.
I haven't got my gels on now. We have Rainbow Project tomorrow. It's a local pride. It's only the second year it's run. And then tomorrow evening, I'm at Worksop Church. So if anybody's in and around the Worksop area, Worksop SNU Church, I shall be there with Jean and a young lady who's just developing her spiritual journey. So, yes, that's me. What about you, dear?
So tomorrow night I am at a psychic supper over out near the Peterborough way, and then it's at Bromley Village Hall. Lovely, lovely church, relatively new. So I'm over there tomorrow night for a psychic supper, and then on Sunday I am off to Kings Lynn to serve the church over in Kings Lynn Town Centre. So haven't been there this year. I, I think I've been there once this year, but very early in the year. So I haven't been certainly there in daylight yet this year. So that'll be good fun to catch up with
Oh, that'll be
everybody there.
fun.
And then back into the usual swing next week with SPTV. Because we've had a week off, obviously, because of the studio, the head office, the main transmitter being moved. But it's good to be with you all. Thank you all for being with us. Whatever you do over the weekend, um, do it with compassion, kindness, and love, and respect each other's differences because that's what makes us human.
Indeed, it
For
is.
now, though, from me, it's good night and God bless.
And from me, good night. God bless.
We will see you. Oh, Sarah. Yes, it'll be
Oh,
available to watch on catch up in about 10 minutes by the time we're finished. But yes, and certainly we really can. Um, I'm sure we'll have a lot to catch up on as we've had a week off ourselves this week. But thank you all for being with us. God bless you all. Tony, a pleasure as always, my friend.